My name is Brooklyn Miller. I'm 38 years old and live in a small town near Denver, Colorado. My youth was tied to Miller Industries, the company my father, Howard Miller, built from nothing. And yet, this morning, as I stepped into the very headquarters that bears my family's name, I felt lost, like a stranger. Everything started the moment Valerie Price, my husband Derek's new assistant, approached me with a smile as sweet as sugar but cold to the bone. I had just settled into a chair in the executive lounge, sunglasses still on, when Valerie appeared with 2 cups of coffee on a tray. "Mrs. Miller, I brought you some hot coffee to help with the tension," she said with a sugary voice, though her eyes sparkled with mockery. I nodded slightly, barely having a chance to reply when a small disaster struck. Her hand accidentally brushed by, tipping the cup and sending scalding liquid onto my white silk blouse, soaking the front. A gasp echoed from nearby employees. I gripped the armrest tightly, feeling the burning spread. Valerie gasped, feigning alarm. "Oh, I'm so clumsy. I'm really sorry. But he always liked a little mess, didn't he?" Her glance darted toward the conference room door where Derek stood with a few associates, as if daring me to notice the boundary they had crossed. The smirk on Valerie's face made my skin burn hotter than the spilled coffee. I rose, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "It's fine, Valerie, I can handle it." But inside, my heart pounded as if it would burst. I knew this was no accident. The coffee-soaked blouse forced me into the nearest women's restroom. Facing the mirror, I saw myself. Wrinkled blouse, stained front, pale face, but eyes blazing with fury. I heard the click of heels approaching. The door opened, and Valerie entered, holding tissues, wearing a look of fake concern. "I really didn't mean to, Mrs. Brooklyn. Sometimes coffee just spills like people's emotions do." She spoke softly, but loud enough for me to hear. I caught the meaning in every word. It was like a knife slicing my pride. I met her gaze, firm. "Valerie, thanks for the coffee, but I don't need any more help." She shrugged, lips curling into an unreadable smile, and turned away. Her footsteps faded, but the ache inside me only deepened. I left the restroom, walking quickly toward the parking lot. Along the way, I felt eyes on me, some pitiful, some curious. Each step felt heavier, not because of the coffee stain, but because of the truth I couldn't ignore. I, the founder's daughter, was no longer respected in the place that used to feel like home. Inside my car, I gripped the steering wheel. I told myself, enough. This won't just be a coffee stain. This will be the beginning of reclaiming what belongs to my father, my family, and to me. I sat in silence, staring at Miller Industries' towering glass headquarters reflecting the midday Colorado sun. Beneath that glass once stood simple brick walls where my father, Howard Miller, began his dream. A dream he said would belong to his only daughter, not to anyone else. Back then, Miller Industries was just a small shop under 10,000 square feet, tucked in an old industrial area of Aurora. My father built it with calloused hands and unbreakable will. I remember a cold winter morning when I was 12. He drove me in his old pickup, stopped in front of the shop, and pointed at the wooden sign that read Miller Tool and Metalworks, shaking in the snowy wind. "You see this, Brooklyn? This is where I trade sweat for our family's future." His voice was rough from the cold, but his eyes shone bright. "One day you'll follow in my footsteps, not because I ask you to, but because you'll understand the value of honest work." Those words stayed with me through the years. When I finished high school, instead of taking summer vacations like my friends, I chose to work at the shop. I started by sorting parts, sweeping metal dusty floors, then helping with inventory checks. The staff liked me, not because I was the boss's daughter, but because I wasn't afraid of hard work. I learned to read mechanical drawings, manage shifts, and most importantly, listen. Earl Johnson, our oldest worker, once patted my shoulder after a late shift. "Miss Brooklyn, you've got Mr. Howard's spirit. You make us feel like more than just employees. You make us feel like family." On hot summer nights, I'd sit with Dad on the shop roof, watching the streetlights twinkle. He'd tell me about the struggles, the first denied loan, the first last-minute canceled order, and the time the shop nearly closed after the press machine caught fire. "What makes Miller Industries isn't steel or machines," my dad always said. It's people. Keep the people's trust and you'll keep the company. After earning my business degree in Denver, Dad made me operations manager at 24. I thought I was ready, but the job was tougher than I imagined. Luckily, the same men who'd taught me to stack bolts and read orders quietly had my back. I remember my first full shop meeting. My voice shook, my palms were sweaty. Seeing this, Earl stood up. "Folks, listen to Miss Brooklyn. She knows this place better than anyone besides Mr. Howard." That gave me the confidence I needed. With Dad's guidance and the team's support, Miller Industries grew from a small shop into a mechanical parts supplier for businesses across the western U.S. My first shareholder meetings were in a simple, wood-scented room where Dad kept a photo of the shop's opening day. But as time passed, I stepped back after having my child. Derek, with his charm and ambition, took over operations. I thought it was natural. Everyone said, "Let the man handle the big stuff." And now, I, the one they once called the heart of Miller Industries, stood on the sidelines watching the company that bears my father's name become a stage for Derek and Valerie's disgraceful show. Thinking of this made my heart ache. I closed my eyes, recalling the warmth in Dad's gaze whenever he rested his hand on my shoulder. Sweetheart, never forget, Miller Industries was built to create, not destroy. If you ever see someone betray that, don't hesitate, hold on to what's yours. I drove along the winding roads toward the suburbs where Dad used to take me for weekend walks. The autumn trees glowed red and gold, but inside I felt empty. The memories of Miller Industries, once full of sweat, tears, and my father's pride, were now buried beneath the false image Derek had tried to create. Derek started changing everything the moment I stepped back from work to focus on our family. At first it was small changes he called modernization. The old oak sign, hand-carved by my father, was replaced with a glaring, cold electronic board hanging on the company's front. I still remember the hollow feeling when I first saw it. When I asked, Derek just gave a slight laugh. "New times, Brooklyn. Customers don't care about that outdated stuff anymore." But it didn't stop at the sign. The Heritage Room, where black and white photos told the story of Miller Industries' rise from a small machine shop to a corporation, was dismantled. In its place was a glass-walled lobby, minimalist in design, so cold people didn't want to linger. The photo of my father beaming beside the original workers in the shop was gone. I asked Derek once, right after he signed a big contract with an out-of-state partner, "Why did you get rid of all that? That was the soul of the company." Derek straightened his tie, eyes still on his laptop. "We can't cling to the past. To attract new investors, the company has to look more polished, more professional." Professional? Did the memories of those who sweated to build this company no longer matter? Then I started noticing familiar faces disappearing. Earl Johnson, the veteran who once guided me, was forced into early retirement under the excuse of workforce reduction. Sarah Kim, the longtime head of HR, was demoted to assistant simply for opposing Derek's plan to cut benefits. Once, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store near home. She avoided my gaze, but when I came closer, she gripped my hand tightly, her voice choked. "The company isn't the same anymore, Brooklyn. We tried to hold on, but everything's slipping away." Every time I returned to Miller Industries, I saw another memory erased. The monthly birthday parties for employees, a tradition my father started to build camaraderie, canceled because they no longer fit the new work culture. The scholarship fund for employees' children quietly vanished. The weekend gatherings at the city park ended too. But what shocked me most was the day I visited the main shop late one afternoon. I always thought I'd hear the hum of machines, lively voices just passing by, but that day the place was eerily silent. A young worker, pulling off his gloves, shook his head when I asked why. "They've outsourced most of the orders now, Miss Brooklyn. We only handle a few small ones here." Miller Industries, the place my father once proudly crafted every part, had become just a shell. That night I sat alone on my porch, eyes on the starry sky, hearing my father's words echo in my mind. "If the day comes when someone betrays the values of Miller Industries, don't hesitate. Protect what's yours." I knew that day had come. The day I could no longer stand by and watch Derek and his associates turn our family legacy into a cold money-making machine. After all these years, the fire within me burned bright again. No longer the pain of a betrayed wife, no longer the helplessness of an outsider. This was the resolve of a daughter, ready to do whatever it took to defend the values my father taught me. I closed my eyes, drew a deep breath. I didn't know what the road ahead would hold, but I knew one thing for sure. I would take it back. I would take back Miller Industries before it was too late. That evening, after quietly folding my father's old photos into a wooden box, I called Marion Bennett, my father's loyal assistant for nearly 2 decades. I remembered her clearly: kind face, neatly pinned gray hair, sharp eyes that still held warmth. She had retired when Derek took over, but sometimes still sent our family holiday cards. The phone rang 3 times before her warm, familiar voice came through. "Brooklyn, it's been so long. Are you all right?" I heard myself answer, my throat tight. "I'm not all right, Marion. I need to see you. I need your help to save Miller Industries." Just a few hours later, we sat across from each other in a quiet corner of an old coffee shop near the bus station. Marion looked older, but her eyes were as steady as ever. I told her everything, from how Derek erased my father's legacy, pushed out loyal employees, to how I felt rejected by the company that bore my name. Marion listened without interrupting, sometimes giving my hand a gentle squeeze. Finally, she nodded. "Brooklyn, I've quietly kept an eye on things. I'm still in touch with someone you should meet, Franklin Reed, the former CFO of Miller Industries. Frank never stopped watching over this company, even after he was forced out. His name felt like a beam of light in the dark. Franklin had taught me to read every number in a financial report, had shown me how even a penny saved could matter to an employee. The next morning, Marianne took me to a modest wooden house on the outskirts of Boulder, where Franklin had lived since leaving Miller Industries. He was just as I remembered: tall, lean, silver hair, clear eyes, a voice slow and steady. "Brooklyn Miller in the flesh, you finally came," he said, opening the door and inviting us in. We sat in a simple living room, where the honorary plaque from my father, the one Franklin received when the company hit its first revenue milestone, still hung on the wall. I didn't hold back. I told him everything, from Valerie's schemes to Derek's imposed changes. Franklin sat in thought for a moment, then pulled out a thick folder. "I figured this day would come. Derek isn't just destroying the company's culture, he's bleeding it dry, Brooklyn." He opened the folder and spread out charts and statements I had never seen. He's set up at least 3 shell companies: Arrow Holdings, Summit Tech Supply, and Vista Materials, all owned by people tied to him or Valerie. Miller Industries is paying double, even triple for contracts I once negotiated myself. That extra cost is lining their pockets. I stared at the numbers, at the undeniable proof. My hands trembled, not from fear but from outrage. "How did you get all this?" I asked. Franklin gave a small smile. "When I was forced out, I didn't leave empty-handed. I backed up all the financial data. I've been watching quietly for years, waiting for someone with the resolve to act, and now that person is here." Marion added, "And you're not alone, Brooklyn. I and everyone who still loves this company will stand with you." I took a deep breath and looked straight at the 2 people who had once been my father's right hands. "I need everything that can be used: invoices, contracts, all the evidence. I won't let my father down. I will take this company back." Franklin gave a small, knowing smile and pulled out an external hard drive he had prepared. "This is the beginning. I'm still in touch with a few of the old team. We'll put together a plan, quiet but solid. Derek won't know what's happening until it's too late." As I left that house, the last light of day bathed the road in fiery gold. It felt as if, after all these years, I was finally walking the right road. And I was ready for the fight to reclaim what belonged to my family. Since the night I received that hard drive from Franklin, I hadn't had a full night's sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the numbers, fake contracts, and shell companies haunted me like ghosts. But alongside the fury, a plan was taking clearer shape in my mind. Franklin helped me comb through the old bylaws my father had carefully written in Miller Industries' founding documents. And there we found the shield my father had left for me, a special clause, Article 12, Section 7. That clause stated, in the event of clear evidence of fraud, asset misuse, or destruction of company culture, direct descendants of the founder have the right to convene a special meeting and request a vote of confidence, with a minimum 30% shareholding accompanied by verified evidence. Reading it over and over, I felt as if my father was still walking this path with me from afar. But that clause was only the key. I needed the shares, at least 30%, and more importantly, people who trusted me enough to give me their vote in this battle for the company. Franklin suggested. Brooklyn, start with Daniel Foster. He was once vice chairman of the board, a man your father respected deeply. Later, Derek pushed him aside. Daniel still holds about 6% through his family trust. The next morning, I went to his ranch outside Grand Junction. Daniel was over 70 now, thin but sharp-eyed. We sat on his porch, the country wind whispering through the old pines. I laid everything out, from the shell companies, the siphoned money, to my father's claws. Daniel stayed silent for a few minutes, staring off into the distance, then turned to me. Your father saved my company from bankruptcy during the oil crisis. Now it's my turn to repay that debt. You have my vote. I left Daniel's ranch with hope burning brighter. Next, I met with Linda Rodriguez, the former manager of the main plant, who had been with my father from day one. Linda owned 4% through her retirement fund. We met at a small diner in town. After hearing me out, she quietly took a shareholder card from her purse. I once dreamed my daughter could work at Miller Industries when she grew up. Don't let it become something I don't recognize anymore. Little by little I approached those Derek had sidelined, Mark Hall, Teresa Nguyen, Jim Carter. Each with their own story, their own pain, but all sharing the hope of seeing the company restored to its true values. Franklin and Marion helped me quietly gather each percent, each vote of confidence. We kept a detailed list, updated by the hour. One night, as the clock struck midnight, Franklin texted, "We've got 31%, Brooklyn, you're holding the key now." But I knew 31% was just a number. I had to turn it into the decisive blow. I arranged a meeting with Elliot Hayes, my father's former personal attorney, retired now but still the most knowledgeable about the company's bylaws. We sat in his study, papers and books stacked high. I laid out the plan. Elliot gave a slow, approving glance. "Well, you're making your father proud. This clause is entirely legal. But be ready, once you go public, Derek won't sit still." I gripped the folder in my hands. I'm not afraid. What scares me is letting this go any further. We began drafting the document to convene the special meeting. Meanwhile, Franklin and Marion kept reaching out to small shareholders, people who thought their vote no longer mattered. In just 2 days we gathered another 3%, bringing the total to 34%, beyond the threshold needed. On my desk now lay all the evidence, the shell company's records, manipulated financial reports, my father's clause, and the list of shareholders who entrusted me with their power. I knew the moment of truth was near. Late one night, I stood alone in front of Miller Industries headquarters, the building glittering with lights but cold. I whispered, "Dad, I'm ready. I'll take it all back, not just for me but for everyone who put their heart into this place." That morning, Denver welcomed a pale sun, the air crisp, while inside me a storm raged. I wore a dark blue suit with silver pinstripes, the colors my father chose for the Miller Industries logo long ago. And pinned to my lapel, the old gear-shaped pin he gave me when I became operations manager. The headquarters towered before me, both familiar and foreign. The glass reflected the blue sky, but inside I knew what my father built had been warped piece by piece. That board meeting was set to approve the merger Derek had been quietly engineering for months. A deal that would legitimize him and Valerie seizing what remained of Miller Industries. But today I was no longer an outsider. Franklin met me at a side entrance, rarely used. He handed me a thick folder, the final proof we had spent the week preparing. "Are you ready?" he asked, eyes filled with faith. Drawing in a slow breath, I closed my fingers around the folder. Ready. We walked into the meeting room just as Derek was presenting the benefits of the merger. His eyes widened for a split second when he saw me, but he quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Brooklyn, you're right on time," Derek said, but I could hear the tension and worry beneath his usual confidence. I stepped to the center of the room and placed the folder on the table. Yes, I'm right on time, Derek, to end your game. The room fell silent. Valerie, usually smug at Derek's side, began to fidget, gripping her pen tightly. I looked around, letting my gaze rest on each board member. Today I'm not here as a wife, I'm here as the daughter of Howard Miller, the founder of this company. And in that role I am formally invoking Article 12, Section 7 of the company bylaws. A murmur rippled through the room. An older member frowned. That clause has never been used before. I opened the folder, my voice firm. Never, because this company has never been in the hands of a destroyer like it is today. One by one I laid out the evidence. Falsified financial reports, contracts with shell companies, statements showing funds funneled into accounts linked to Derek and Valerie. Arrow Holdings, Summit Tech Supply, Vista Materials. I read each name clearly. These are the shell companies Derek created to bleed Miller Industries. Here are the invoices, here are the transfers, here is the irrefutable proof. Derek shot to his feet. You're making this up, this is a plot to bring me down out of personal spite. Franklin stood then, sliding forward documents he had signed and authenticated. This is internal data I backed up during my tenure, every figure is original, beyond fabrication. A board member flipped quickly through the pages, his expression darkening. These numbers, we've never seen the originals before. I lifted my chin, meeting Derek's gaze. You say I'm making this up? Then how do you explain the account in Valerie's name receiving payments from these fake contracts? Valerie's face went pale, her voice trembling. I don't know what Derek did with those contracts. The whispers in the room grew louder. Then I placed the list of allied shareholders next to the company bylaws. I and the loyal shareholders now control 34% of the shares. Under the founding clause, I formally demand a confidence vote and the immediate suspension of all pending merger deals. A long silence followed until the oldest board chair nodded. Proceed with the vote. The results were announced after 15 tense minutes. An overwhelming majority supported suspending Derek and Valerie, launching an internal investigation, and appointing a temporary leadership board under my direction. Derek sank into his chair, his gaze empty. Valerie lowered her head, avoiding everyone's eyes. As security arrived to escort them from the room, I spoke clearly. Derek, you had the chance to protect this company with me, but you chose betrayal, and today, I will protect it at all costs. My eyes stopped on the Miller Industries logo on the wall, the carving of my father still intact. Dad, I did it, I said softly, the words catching in my throat. When the doors closed behind Derek and Valerie, I stood quietly in the vast room, feeling my heart still racing, the echo of the battle just fought. The board members' faces showed lingering shock, but in their eyes I saw the flicker of hope, something Miller Industries had been missing for years. I was appointed interim CEO with near unanimous support from the board. No more cold, formal handshakes, just looks of genuine respect from those who once doubted I was anything more than the wife in her husband's shadow. On my first official day in this new role, I entered the company headquarters with a renewed spirit. A simple dark blue suit, no flashy accessories. I wanted the employees to see a leader who was approachable, not some distant figurehead. I gathered all the employees in the main hall, where Derek had once hung a screen showing stock prices as a silent reminder that profit was the ultimate goal. Now, on that wall, I had restored the photo of my father with the original workers that Derek had removed. My voice rang out, strong but sincere. Today, Miller Industries returns to the values my father, Howard Miller, built. Quality, integrity, family. We don't work just to chase profit. We work so we can be proud of what we create, and so that everyone here feels valued. The applause began softly, then swelled into a long, heartfelt ovation. I saw eyes glistening. People who thought those values were lost forever. The days that followed were tense but filled with resolve. Together with Franklin, Marion, and veteran managers, I reviewed every contract, every expense, every plan Derek had twisted. We canceled crooked deals, launched internal investigations, and cooperated with the authorities. Colleagues once pushed aside returned. Linda Rodriguez resumed managing the main plant. Mark Hall led HR training again. the role he had once held with all his heart. I also revived small but meaningful traditions: monthly birthday parties for staff, the scholarship fund for workers' children, weekend family gatherings. Miller Industries was no longer a soulless profit machine. We were rebuilding a family, just as my father had dreamed. One late afternoon, as the sun cast a warm glow over the offices, I took the completed report of what we'd accomplished and drove to the nursing home where my father spent his final years. Dad sat in his familiar chair by the window, watching the garden outside. His silver hair glowed in the setting sun. I knelt beside him, placed my hand on his frail, but still remarkably warm hand. "Do you think I'm gay?" "That," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I kept my promise. Miller Industries is back where it belongs. I didn't let it be sold off. Didn't let it be destroyed." He turned his head, his age-clouded eyes suddenly bright with tears. With all the strength he had left, he lifted his thin hand to my cheek. His voice was hoarse, but his words filled the quiet room. "You are my pride." In that moment, all the fatigue, pain, and bitterness from this long journey melted away. I was once again his little girl, seen with eyes full of love. I stayed by his side for a long time, telling him everything we'd done. About the returning employees, the joyful birthday parties, the trust slowly returning to every corner of the plant and office. As night fell, I left the nursing home, my heart light as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted. In the distance, Miller Industries headquarters still glowed, not with showy lights, but with the light of people working hard for a shared future. I knew there was much left to do, but from that day forward, Miller Industries truly had a new beginning. A beginning built on the love, integrity, and trust my father had once placed in me. My story isn't just about reclaiming Miller Industries. It's about reclaiming myself. Once underestimated, I rose to protect my family's legacy and bring back the values my father cherished: integrity, quality, and the spirit of family. Today, Miller Industries is no longer a soulless machine chasing profit. It's a place where everyone takes pride in what they build. And I've learned that sometimes it's the challenges that help us find our true strength. What do you think about Brooklyn's journey and how she protected her family's legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful and heartfelt stories about family life.